Well, I'm not gonna lie, you killed it fans. This is a little odd for me. This is a little different. John usually kicks off the podcast each and every week, but if you are a you killed it fan, then you know that last week John indicated that he would be away. He's on vacation. He's somewhere on a beach somewhere, I think. I saw a picture on maybe Facebook or Instagram or something, and I just quickly turned away because I was just super jealous. But but fear not. You killed it, fans. We still have a great episode here for you. And filling in is another one of my good friends and another fellow challenge superfan, Lawrence Thomas, aka Mr. LT. LT, my
Yes,
dude, how you doing, man?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that John is getting some much needed downtime,
Mhm.
and I could try my best to fulfill his shoes here on You Killed It. I want to say I want to say off the bat that I'm gonna try my best to speak slowly and clearly because the challenge, like other things, gets me very excited. And when you get excited, sometimes words become like one word, and I want everyone to hear everything okay. And I'm gonna do my best to just fill in and cruise control this ship till John can get back.
Well, here's the thing, right? First off, there's only one rule, and the rule is, do you like the challenge?
Yes.
Sure, I'm sure you'll do fine then. Nothing more crazy than that, because this has been such a fantastic season, and I know that you love the challenge as well, LT. So first off, I just want to ask you, how are you enjoying this season so far?
Honestly, the season came out hot.
Mhm.
Season came out hot. I was all in. First few episodes were great. I think for me it lulled a little bit in the middle because they started extending them out and you weren't getting the full episode cycles when
Mhm.
you get your challenge, you get your troika, you like the whole to the elimination. Like when they really stretch them out, that slows it down for me.
Mhm.
But now now the past few weeks you're getting your full circle. Like it might not start in the same spot, but like it always goes around and kind of roughly ends in the same spot. And that's why I love last night because not only did they actually went like you kind of got a circle and a quarter, maybe even a circle and a half because they went from elimination through elimination to the next challenge, which
Exactly.
we'll all get through. I know, but we actually got like a full like it almost felt like a bit of a bonus episode because they got
Yeah.
so much stuff in there. The only thing missing was a club scene.
True. Very true. And you know what's so funny? I swear to you, at one point, I had to check my PVR to be like, wait, is this a longer episode than normal? Like, was this 2 hours? Was this an hour and a half? Like, I had to double check that because I was just assuming the episode was over after
Right.
the elimination round, and then I was like, oh, wait a second, they're actually like
There's more.
starting this challenge, and it's not just going to commercial and gonna end. I was like, oh, okay, let me
Yeah,
sit
yeah,
back down and pay attention.
exactly.
But as you mentioned, a great episode as well, and a classic. What I like to call them, LT, is an episode. If you were just trying to sell someone on what this show is about, it would be the
Yes.
last few episodes, right? Because you're seeing what it is more so about the strategy behind it, plus seeing some pretty good challenges, some pretty good eliminations. Sometimes I think the club scenes might catch people a little off guard, so you got to ease them into those things, if they're new to the
Yeah,
show.
yeah. If anything, maybe not like full club, but maybe a little bit more of the house drama was missing
Yeah,
as far as your full challenge experience
for sure.
in this particular episode.
Mhm.
But definitely the major points were there, and you get a feel at least for how the show works.
Exactly. So, I mean, let's start off with what happened at the episode right at the beginning, right? You get
Right.
Nelson and Natalie, and Natalie's crying again, and this is becoming a theme lately this season, right? And she's
Yep.
trying to make up with Nelson. She's trying to apologize for turning on him last week, and she says in her own words that she betrayed Nelson. But do her
Right.
words mean anything, LT? Do you believe her?
Not a whole lot, and even if you want even if you got caught and you did something you didn't want to do, she didn't do the best job of explaining herself.
Mm-hmm.
At least from what they showed us. Obviously, conversations get edited down and all that stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, first off, going back to last week, if she's gonna lose 2-1 anyways, um, there one could say that she should have just found someone to vote for because like the guys were pretty solid on voting for Nelson, and I feel like you might not run into that trap that happened last season where Brittany used her burn vote on
Leroy.
Leroy, yeah, on Leroy, and it ended up coming back to bite him. Like, I don't think she was in that situation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if she didn't want to possibly make someone mad and just vote Nelson because she knew she was going to lose anyways, she definitely didn't seem to explain that properly.
Yeah.
Because if you go to Nelson, like, listen, I was losing anyways. They're gonna vote you in. It's 2-on-1. I really had no power.
Yeah.
I might as well. I might as well just go along with them. Like, I had no power to do anything, and there's no point in making somebody else mad just to make you feel better. Because I couldn't stop this from happening.
For sure. Like, and the other thing too,
to me, it seemed like an easy explanation. I don't know if they left it out or whatever, but it didn't happen.
So it's one of those things too, and I know that you watched Natalie's season of Big Brother, but one of the things that we talked about a lot on this season of the challenge was that she kind of got caught up in the Big Brother game, in which every single week the balance of power switches, right? And so you kind of got to friend up whoever is HOH that week because they're in complete control of what's going on in the house. Whereas in the challenge, she came in kind of with that same mentality, like jumping bandwagons, when you don't really have to do that, right?
And people are going to notice too. Like, at some point, like, even if it might save you from, like, here and there. But eventually, even the people that are saving you are going to know that, like, hey, if I lose this power, you're just going to jump onto the next person with power.
Yeah, it was super interesting. And you're right, too, because a perfect example of that is Nelson. Nelson says he doesn't trust her. But as always, I can't lie. One of the other themes here that we talk about on this podcast is poor Nelson, right? Because he just continuously seems to be getting played.
When he's not getting in his own way, he still can't get a break by having a solid ally.
Exactly, right? So it was interesting to see that he didn't really trust Natalie, but I wanted to see where it was going to go and if, he's going to get backstabbed again, and he kind of did, but we'll get there.
And I will say the only thing that I do think Nelly might have. I mean, I know they promote the whole vendetta thing. I think going as far as calling her a vendetta might have been a bit much. Mm-hmm. Maybe if I was him, I'm like, yo, like, I'm not gonna go out of my way to protect you, mm-hmm. but I don't know if I need to, like, go out of my way to get back at you either. Like,
exactly.
I don't know how mad I am I don't know exactly how mad he should be at Natalie. Because in the end, she couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
I feel like he should realize some of that himself. Mm-hmm. But it's really like, we can be like how he said, we're gonna be civil. Like, we can be cool, but I'm not gonna go out my way to keep you safe. Maybe because the longer he plays that long, like, the more she might help him in the future. Like,
exactly.
As much as he can't trust her, at least she's not giving her don't give her a reason to, like, come against you either when she has a chance.
Yeah. And it's funny because she kind of did have a chance in this episode, right? And the way that this episode played out, it wasn't until the very end that I was like, oh yeah, this was a weird one for Natalie, because she was actually part of the Troika that made the teams, right?
Right.
So essentially this challenge is called the Spanish Treasure. And just to kind of go through what's going down, you split into two teams. The Troika chooses the teams, which was added in as a dub over again, which I don't know why, but we'll get to that later on. I think it goes
back to the whole conspiracy that we have now. Like, I think that even though, like, that is a dub, because I think that line and those cutaways in general always
happen,
put in afterwards.
Yeah.
Just for production purposes and editing purposes and making us so. It wasn't until this season that seemed to have, like, an actual effect on the game. Because now we're right. Like,
totally.
Now we have the conspiracy of, like, well, they didn't say that the Troika chooses from back in the other swim challenge.
Exactly.
With Maria, and I think this is the combination of that. Like, I think this is exactly
why they didn't show it earlier, because it would have been the exact
we've been leading up to, mm-hmm. with Zach and Tony controlling it the whole time, mm-hmm. and not really wanting to give that away. Like, I think we're getting to that point now where this is what they didn't want you to see, and so, like, it's all coming to a head from what you guys here on You Killed It have talked about with Marie and all that stuff. It's all coming together now, and now we see why they might have like fudged it a little bit along the way.
Totally. And, just to break down this challenge a little, which seemed kind of hard, right? Because it was, you're basically at, what was it called? Like a spring, essentially, right?
Yeah, it was a spring. Like, essentially like a pond, little waterfall. Like, it was,
Looked nice.
Spring is the word. That's what they called it.
It was very scenic, let's say. So one person,
picturesque.
Yes. So one person has to jump in. They have to swim over to a group of balls. They grab the balls. Then you have to go underwater and put the ball into a net. And once you get a certain amount of balls into the net would then lift up a treasure chest to the top. Then your team can drag the treasure chest to the finish line. It was a timed event. The fastest team wins. And I think they split $25K or whatever. Burger King is also.
I did take notes. And for the record, I'm currently team handwritten note.
Team handwritten. What's wrong with you guys? Handwritten notes.
Well, I'll give you my reasons. I actually don't have a laptop. I have a desktop, and it's not by the TV.
That's amazing.
So it seems easier to go handwritten note versus iPhone notes taking. Handwritten, you can at least go all over the page and make team columns and that type of stuff.
We need to have like a poll. I got to put up a poll in like one of these one of these groups to figure out like how many people are out here still writing notes in 2018. That's amazing to me.
You know what?
It's so good.
Shout out to Mrs. Thomas because she always has notepad books all over the place. So it was easy to just grab one. That's fair.
So yeah, as I go back to my notes that are nicely typed out on my laptop. So basically this was a pretty interesting event, but the big key here, aside from the Burger King, is that it's a girls' elimination week, right?
Yes.
So we get to the grenades, and there are 3 choices for the grenades, as always. You can take the money, you can add time to someone, or you can tie someone's ankles. So this was super interesting because Cam once again had the grenade, and she decided to add time to Cara Maria. Now, what would you have done in this question? Because the other part was Brad also had a grenade, and Brad decided to add, because what Brad did, which was super smart, Brad asked a question, which we haven't seen anyone do before.
Which I will lie, I didn't think of immediately either. Like when he asked it, it was. I mean, I wish they almost from a post production moment is pause everyone's face when Brad asked the question because I was like, oh, right,
great point, right?
That's a good point, Brad.
Yeah, right. So basically, his question was, if I use a crunch time before they make the teams, can't they just put me on the same team as the time crunch? Which obviously the answer is yes. TJ was ready for that. They knew the rules. He's like, yes. But Zach and Tony were quick to say, don't worry, Brad, you're fine. So he decides to add it to Kyle. So I wrote down right at this moment, I'm like, why is Brad even trusting them? I wouldn't trust them and take their word for it. Which obviously we see later on as this plays out that definitely you should not be trusting these guys. But he does, and he gives it to Kyle. And now Kyle is not happy because he can't even compete. Because obviously you can't swim with your legs tied. So they're not going to let you do that, right?
Right. Definitely, they won't even let you try due to the obvious insurance issues.
Right.
But I mean, technically, you could dolphin kick the whole way. It's entirely possible, right?
For sure.
No, maybe I don't know. It's an expert swim level that is not really reasonable, but maybe I've gone too far. But I'm thinking when you have if they give you one big flipper or something I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you would get that to work at all. But the interesting part
it's definitely dangerous. Don't even let them try it, right?
Exactly. So the other thing too that's super interesting was we mentioned Cam using it on Cara, which is the second time that she is using one of her grenades on Cara Maria. The first time didn't really work out too well, and this time it also doesn't work out well. Why? Because they put Cam on the same team. And they're laughing while they do it too. There's a lot of, and we'll get to this later on in the episode, but I just want to throw this out there as a thought early on. Are Tony and Zach playing a little hard? They're feeling themselves right now. And they've been running the game now for a while, but aren't there enough numbers on the other side to like flip this? Like, is it really that simple that all of these guys are just gonna like they're gonna waltz to the final? You know what I mean? I mean, I guess so, apparently, but it just seems so weird to me how this was all playing out.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like it was a moment of cards on the table. If you're not on team Zach and Tony, they're in charge and you're in trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
It definitely I definitely think that this was the moment of their game being no longer hidden, like and it should be super clear of where not only where they stand, not only how much power they've actually had throughout the game, but also who they're willing to protect and who they're willing to throw under the bus.
Yeah,
because I mean, Cam's just one person. In the end, she's one person. She wasn't necessarily gunning for them. So to essentially leave her in firing range in the blast radius of her own grenade, so to speak, definitely puts it out there that hey, like we're not even going to respect you as your elimination win, Cam. We're still going to leave you in danger.
Yeah,
like in a team event where we don't really need to.
Exactly. And it was super weird too because, they're laughing as they make said move.
Right.
But again, like the other part I wanted to bring up was this kind of a happy accident? Because it was kind of the first time. And I know that every time this grenade thing has come up, it's not like there's always been two people with a possible grenade. But
right.
Do you think it was planned out that they used both grenades on Kyle and Cara Maria? Like, do you think that was planned out by Brad and Cam, or was it kind of a happy accident by Brad?
I think it might have been planned. It might have been planned out. Now that you mention it, like I mean, I think Cam was going to use it on Cara anyways because she just sees her as a competitive threat.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't even think she has anything. It doesn't even seem like she has anything personal or anything against Cara, except she just sees her as the person most likely to beat her.
For sure.
So it's like, you know what? That's why I'm using my grenade. Which again, if I'm Cara, like you shouldn't be even that mad at. Like you have been in, as gets kind of stated later on, like you have been in finals and all these things. Like, why should people just let you go?
Exactly.
Like, it kind of goes to the whole even bananas thing from putting the rookies first and all, and everyone getting all
stripes.
Yeah, everyone getting all up in arms every time their names get said early in the season. It's like, why should we just let you go to the end? Like, you've proven yourself to be the hardest person to beat. Like,
it's so hilarious, right?
But I don't. It seemed like it might have been a little plan, or maybe Brad just like, you know what, like maybe he's just fast thinking on the spot. Like he just proved that he's fast thinking on the spot by asking that question, right?
For sure. So maybe he just thought on the spot, like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do this and figure it out that way.
Exactly. Lack of options. At the same time, remember him and Kyle though were like cool earlier in the season. So it did seem odd that he just decided to tie him up.
Yes. So the way that the teams end up breaking down in full, we end up having Zach, Tony, Brad, Jemmy, Natalie, Nicole, and Devin. Right. Team 2 ends up being Kyle, Cara, Cam, Nelson, Leroy, and Kayla. So basically, as Devin, while he was laughing again, because Devin basically was laughing throughout this entire episode, right?
Yeah.
Devin's just laughing at people this entire time. But as he so clearly points out, that the other team is made up of 7 people, 1 has their feet tied, and 3 others that can't swim. So that, first off, it was genius in terms of how they put the team just to basically like rig this competition. The other team has no chance of winning when most of your people can't swim. But the other thing here is that Natalie was a part of the Troika, and she did not try to save Nelson at all. Nelson is on this losing team again. So should he be surprised?
Yeah. You know what? No, he should have been surprised. This was definitely the moment for Natalie to maybe make amends because like you're not really even super saving him. Like you're just putting him on the better team.
Yeah.
And I'm trying. The only problem I think Natalie might have had is who takes Nelson's place. I think the answer is Devin, because Devin was calling out your stuff. Like, Devin's sitting there calling you out with bananas and all that stuff. You have no real allegiance to him, you should be being like, yo, Devin should be on this team, and we should take note. And we should take notes. And I know he's not the best swimmer, but they're already going to be two people short.
Win. Yeah, you're already going to win anyway, so it doesn't matter. And also, too, you know what? Bare minimum, Natalie should have just said something. Because,
she
and again,
just said something. It's very true. I mean,
we don't know.
Again, I'll give her like a 2% benefit of the doubt that maybe she did, and it was cut out.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
there's that chance.
But, yeah, it seemed like she was pretty solid. She definitely didn't put up enough of a fuss to even make an edit, right? So this is when Nelly should be really upset. If versus the elimination, because it was 2-on-1 vote, he was going to lose regardless.
Yeah, this has to be the one where he was like, yeah, bun Natalie forever. There's no coming back from this one, right? That has to be the answer.
Exactly.
But, my thing here too, right, is this challenge ended up being like really simplistic, right? The other team just wins super easy. There's not really much to break down because the other team couldn't even really. I don't even know if they got one ball into the net.
I don't think so. And you're right. Like it was a pretty straightforward one. There's no strategy. There's no real doing things the right way versus the wrong way. Like it was a very straightforward challenge.
It was a very straightforward challenge. But would you be able to do this? Do you think it was an easy challenge? Are you a big swimmer? How would you have done in this?
Honestly, I think I'd be able to do it. The only thing that made me hesitate, like when the first group went, I definitely thought I could do it.
Yeah.
But then when all of a sudden when the second group went, it was all of a sudden much harder to keep the balls underwater. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't realize how easily the first group might have made it look.
Yeah.
I myself, I'm a decent swimmer. I've never swam with try to push balls underwater. Like I couldn't tell you last time I've done that. Even when you play you got the swimming pool, like basketball net and that type of stuff. I couldn't even tell you last time I did any of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But going into it, I definitely thought so. The second team made me question myself a little bit.
Same. Totally.
And I want to jump in and be like, and one of the things I wanted to point out, there are two things. One is I didn't know that it seemed like they were instructed to jump feet first because jumping feet first made no sense.
I didn't even notice that. I didn't take that part in.
Yeah, because I guess spraying shallow water, they didn't want them to hit their heads. You would assume. True. Yeah. But when you're racing to a point, especially with your hands free and you're jumping from a ledge, like you dive in. You wouldn't jump feet first. It's very not efficient as far as speed from one point to the next going into water. For sure,
it was all super crazy. And so, as we said, Team Tony ends up winning, right? Yeah. By a landslide.
Devin laughing all the way.
Devin laughing the entire time. There were divers that were already in the water that are there to help the people that can't swim. Right? Nelson holding the tree. It was really pathetic. And I will say, I felt bad for them. And it was weird because while Devin was laughing, I was watching it and I was thinking, I'm going to pose this question to you and to the listeners at the same time because I'd love to hear people's feedback, right? Because at one point Devin's laughing and who was it? I think it might have been Tony that's like, oh, it's stop, man. It's not that funny. But then in Tony's confessional, right, he says, if you can't swim, you probably shouldn't even be on the challenge, right? And
he said that they should go home and learn. They need to get this right, or they shouldn't come back.
Yes. So, do you feel sorry for them, the fact that they couldn't swim, or is that just kind of wait a second, there will be a swimming challenge at some point. If you can't swim, that's on you. Bun them. Which side of this do you fall on? Did you feel sorry for them or no?
A bit of both, really. To be totally honest, basically, I definitely it's hard to say exactly. I feel less sympathetic for the people who are there longer, like Leroy, because you've done this enough times that you should have a better idea that this is coming. And even though they showed him doing laps in the pool and stuff, and he might have gotten better just swimming across water, but he's not worked on going underwater.
For sure. Totally.
And that came up with the nighttime one too, right? And so maybe this is just a point of the swimming game that he needs to work on. And, like, he was worried about. He's been learning how to swim laps and doing those long when they have to like jump in and swim to shore and that type of stuff. Maybe that's gotten better for him, but he definitely his swim game is needing help. Same with Nelson. Nelson should know a bit better. Like the only one that I feel not that bad for is Cam because it's their first time.
Yeah.
Even though research says you should probably figure this out, but until like you probably feel like, hey, I could tread water and I'll be fine.
Yeah,
and you don't realize till you get there how much of a swimmer you need to be.
Exactly.
But I do want to mention one thing, especially as far as those three go, and I want to just have a social moment, a social commentary moment, if you will.
I'm with you.
And say that with those three and as black competitors and the old stereotypes of black people in pools and all that type of stuff.
Yes.
Here's the thing is that it's become a bit of a running gag over time, but the historical reference of it is it's one of those things that I don't usually get on the take the pulpit and get to social commentary.
Yeah.
Especially on this because we're all here for fun.
Yeah.
But the numbers of the percentage of black people, especially in the states, that cannot swim are super, super high. and that's not even a joke. I thought it a few years ago. I thought it's something in the 75 to 80 percentile.
It is crazy.
Really high.
I remember Bomani doing a whole thing on it because there's something about it. Maybe it was during the Olympics when
that's probably it. That was probably when it came up.
Yeah, and he was talking about how people don't realize that it's a social economic thing, right? So in a lot of these urban neighborhoods, there's not public pools. Whereas if you go
and also going back, what was one of the big civil rights there? Is that they weren't allowed to swim.
Exactly, they weren't allowed to go to the same public pools.
And so you have generations of people that didn't swim and weren't allowed to swim or were never able to progress that way.
Definitely.
And now their children are in the same boat, right?
Definitely.
And that's the only thing that I kind of want to say is that there's a particularly with black people, black African Americans swimming in the States and the historical reference of why that is, and a lot of it has to go back to the time when they weren't allowed to be in the pools and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, it becomes a generational thing, and then it's a generational thing, as you said. Yeah, and then again, once you get into certain neighborhoods, right, there aren't public pools that are kept up well.
You fast forward 30, 40 years later, now the neighborhoods don't have pools and all that, and that's how you end up in this situation.
Yes. No, definitely.
Good on Tony for at least having enough sportsmanship to not to realize that it's gone too far.
Yeah, they rigged it pretty well. They rigged it pretty well, and basically they rigged it so hard that it wasn't even close. It was probably bad television, and they end up winning.
But it got to especially when you have a couple people on the team to try to carry the team. I looked at that that wasn't a good look for Cara.
Exactly.
Right. She couldn't even get the ball down.
True. Very true. So they end up losing really bad. But then things get super interesting, right?
Because they do.
The winning team ends up meeting, and they have to choose who the Troika is. So it's a girls' elimination, but once again, Zach and Tony demand to be into the Troika, and then Brad says, well, I went first, and I also brought a grenade to the table, so I think that I should be able to get in too. So all the girls on the team, which is Jemmy, Natalie, and Nicole, they all hesitate, but ultimately let this happen. How the heck did they let this happen? Is my question.
Honestly, I do not know. They should have I don't even know if they need to. I don't know what they need to say. I don't know if they need to go straight 2-year-old tantrum. I'm not moving till you put me on this Troika. Yeah. But this was the moment. This is the moment where I think all the others not letting us see the Troika make all the teams. All this is what I was kind of alluding to earlier, right? This is when it all gets exposed. Where now we have Tony and Zach kind of not even with the suggestion, everyone just kind of going with it, but essentially strong arming themselves into the Troika.
Yeah.
and and it's becoming it's also becoming kind of clear that like this has become a male dominated thing as well. Like everything kind of just went to focus in this 5 minute span here, right?
And it was weird, like one of the things I try to do sometimes is like play devil's advocate and think, okay, well, what were these other people thinking, right?
Right.
And I can kind of see, okay, so Nicole has been pretty quiet throughout the whole season and she's being taken care of. So I can kind of understand, like, she's not really worried because she doesn't think that she's going in. The point that Jemmy made, it was kind of smart too. Like, once she realized that, hold on here, as long as it's not going to be me, like if it's not going to be me that gets into the Troika, all I'm doing by arguing for another girl to go in is eliminating one more possibility of someone else that would go into the elimination. Meaning you're upping my chances of going into the elimination. So I'm totally cool with that, which on a level makes sense.
It does.
Which leaves us to Natalie. Natalie has no reason to trust them. To trust anybody at all. Plus, she could say, well, hey, I was in the Troika and I was involved in picking the teams too, so I have just as much of a right as you two do of being in it again, right? And like, that's the part that I don't understand. And what I mean in terms of like Tony and Zach playing the game like super hard, right? Because you're allowing them to keep themselves safe, which means they don't get, like, you can't use the grenades against them as long as they're members of the Troika. They're also getting to pick the teams all the time, right? So, like, how can you just keep continuing to let them be safe the entire time? Like, it made absolutely no sense to me, but especially in Natalie's case.
I completely agree, and like you said, it also shows how like hard Tony and Zach play in the game when they're in no danger. They like as far as their kind of numbers alliance thing goes, they're not working with any women. Maybe I guess essentially Cara because they've known her the longest, but they really have no allegiance to any of the women. Like they have absolutely nothing to lose by giving up power this week.
Exactly right. They had nothing to lose, but it just was. I think it was just a matter of as long as you stay in power, like the odds are better in terms of controlling the game than they are if you give up control, right? And so it was an interesting play, but I don't know how this continued to happen. And at first I was like, this is kind of weird. But again, if you're Natalie, right? So should you trust Zach and Tony? Of course not. Like they turned on Bananas, they turned on Brittany, and like Devin again, more laughing from Devin because he's like, what? And he actually did step up and say, wait, are you guys sure about this? Like, shouldn't there be one girl in just because it's a girl's elimination? Like, if it was reversed, there's no way the reverse would happen. Like, it was kind of weird. But on top of that,
and as we're at home sitting there, me like this is strange. Like, and like this doesn't make any sense that Zach and Tony are just powering themselves into this. As we're sitting at home saying this, we have our favorite host saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Which was so much fun seeing TJ be like, as soon as they announced the Troika, that TJ's like, oh, okay.
Exactly, right? It's so true, right? TJ was on the ball so many times during this episode. And I wonder if Zach and Tony knew that there was a bigger reward this time around, right? Like, I'm not talking about the Burger King, but someone made a comment as soon as they announced, like, oh, you also get to ride down the hill in these cars and you get to go, have the massage or whatever. One of them was like, oh, I knew it. Right?
Like they might have seen the cars when they rolled into the location.
Exactly. Like something was going down, so they kind of knew. So maybe that was part of the reason why they were so forceful to stay in, because they didn't know what that extra challenge or that extra reward would be, but they knew that they wanted to get it. So if that's the case, my question then turns to, well, do they deserve it then? Like, do they deserve the extra reward for how much they've been running the game?
No.
That's fair. That's fair.
The extra reward you get for running the game is winning the final.
Fair enough.
You don't need to ride in a sport. You don't need to get Burger King and a massage and ride in a sports car too. Like you run the game, you win. That's your reward.
Yes, definitely. So
it's like the vendors when you go to your your baseball game down at the Dome or at the AC, you always got that one smart vendor like, yo, buy a beer, get a beer.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's totally true. Totally true.
Yeah. No, they'll deserve extra.
So the other reward that they got, obviously, was they had to pick someone to go directly into the elimination round, right? Is that what happened? Oh no, sorry, I messed that up.
No, you skipped it.
So
the
basically, sorry,
pick.
my bad. The losing team here, right? We had more drama because the losing team of Leroy, Kyle, Nelson, Cam, Cara, and Kayla get to decide which one of the girls are going directly into the elimination.
Right.
Now, they vote once.
Yep.
And it ends up being a tie. And then they had to vote again. And now, of all people, shouldn't Leroy remember how this goes down? Right? Because Leroy was burned by this. You alluded to it earlier, talking about how Brittany and using the burn vote. And what ended up happening was the votes were locked up. And they said, if you don't untie the votes, someone else gets to choose who's going in. And they can choose anybody. And so what ended up happening was someone changed their vote. And Leroy ended up going in straight. Right?
Exactly.
So this time around, Leroy, I guess, isn't paying attention or he's not thinking that far ahead in terms of like who's going to get to pick. Or maybe did he think that Zach and Tony wouldn't pick Cam?
I think he thought somebody else on the losing team would flip to Kayla.
Oh.
Like I mean, because he was the first vote too, right?
Yeah.
So he didn't really get to sit there and plan it out. Like should he have?
That is
should
true.
Should he have known that he wasn't going to get that flip to Kayla? I guess so. But when they revoted, he was the first vote both times. Yeah. So when they revoted, he just went with that same first vote.
Thing. Yeah.
And that, I think he thought somebody else would have flipped to Kayla, and it would have been fine. Mm-hmm. But it ended up flipping. It ended up stalemating again.
And then you get the Troika, and the Troika picks Killa Kam.
Exactly.
Were you surprised by their pick of Cam?
Who has been in and come back both times against mercenaries?
Yes. The crazy part too was this like a sign of karma? Because I was like, wait a second. So Natalie doing shady biz with Nelson, right? Karma comes back and gets her, right? Yep. She ends up being like we'll get to that. And then Killa Kam keeps trying to use the grenade on Cara Maria, and that keeps coming to bite her in the butt. She doesn't even get on being the winning team while putting herself on the losing team with Cara and the time struggle. But then on top of that now, you're getting sent into the elimination. Like, what a fall from, here's your victory, you should be on a high, right back to, screw you. You're going back to the
keeps having to go to work. Like, I don't want to say it's karma for Cam because she's not maliciously doing anything. She's literally just playing the game. And it's like, but nothing that she does seems to work out for her. Yeah. So, like, I feel like, she's not lying to anybody. She's not even really going after Cara for any type of, petty means. She just is like, hey, I think you're the best person, so I'm gonna give you an obstacle.
For sure.
Like,
no, totally.
She's not saying that thing. She's not saying mean things about people or anything. She's just there, and she can't catch a break.
Speaking of catching breaks, LT, the Troika, they got to catch a break because they got a nice ride down the mountain, and it kind of reminded me of the inside sports cars, and it kind of reminded me of the scene from the Jay-Z "Show Me What You Got" video. I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, got some cool scenic shots going on there. But anyways, they get back to the meeting and where they get to decide what's going on, right? And again, we discussed how they promised the girls that they were not going to put any of them in, right? As long as they allowed them to be the Troika. And how quickly did they just flip on that and decide that we're putting Natalie in?
Well, here's the thing. Here's what I wrote down. Because I literally had like I don't know if it's deja vu, if it's even like Pavlov's dog, where you're trained to hear when you hear certain things and you react a certain way.
Yeah.
That type of stuff. But in that moment where they go in, they put Natalie in, and they cut to Zach's confessional, and he's talking about, I'm the jerk, I'm the asshole.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, did Jenna walk in through the door? Like, and it just kind of hit me where it's like, Zach and Tony have been running this game, and we have 2 weeks in a row where they have just straight up lied to people and sent them in, but these people happen to be women, and like Zach and Tony don't have the best track record when dealing with
that's fair.
Like as far as their honesty goes with women and relationships and all that type of stuff. Like
women and bananas, right?
You know what I mean? Like there's a bit of a history with as far as the way Zach and Tony, like even though they're not in a relationship with these particular women, and I'm not gonna go on and say that they're women haters, but they don't have a problem like just like not treating them the way they said they would.
Mm-hmm.
They I don't know if I'm just bringing up skeletons or whatever, but as soon as he said that, I'm like, we've heard this before.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. It kind of reminded you.
And it was like a lot of bells went off for me in that between the deciding the Troika and the Inquisition deliberation.
Mm-hmm.
I guess like that's like wow, like these guys really, as much as they changed, they kind of haven't.
But here's the thing for me, right? And I'll agree with you on a certain level. Like, obviously, the tapes don't lie, right? Like, we've seen what Zach's done to Jenna, like, on camera. So, like, what he's done to her off camera, you can only imagine. And also, we've seen Tony have his demons, let's say, in the house as well, right? So, I totally understand what you're saying. On some level, though, and I think that these people as competitors in the house gotta take some credit for their own demise themselves. And so if I'm Natalie, right? If I'm whoever, if I'm Jemmy, if I'm all of them, I got to look at the fact that they blatantly lied to Brittany last week, and they turned on Bananas, who was their big brother or whatever they wanted to call him, the week before that. So these people, when they're looking at you saying, don't worry, you can trust me, my retort would be like, well, you said the same thing to this person, and you said the same thing to this person, so why should I believe you now?
It's very true.
And they just rolled with it, right? And they just listened to it. In terms of the manipulation of how this whole game was being played, like, I think it's an interesting thing in the sense that why would you let yourself fall into that trap, right? Like, you have nothing to be gained if you're Natalie. You're just trying to hope that these guys are telling you the truth when they've told nobody the truth except each other the entire time, right?
And granted, like that's the first portrayal was Bananas, and he most definitely isn't a woman and all that stuff. Like, so that's outside of the pattern. To me, I don't know. I think it was just that is just hearing that it was like wow, but. You're right. Like Natalie should have known that she cannot trust these guys, and I think it's just that you just get that sense of you believe like they had a reason to do it for other people, but they won't have a reason to do it to you. Like you kind of give yourself that false sense of security, and that's why like I think all three of those girls should have fought harder for the Troika. Like even though they might not necessarily need it, like Jemmy and Nicole had said, right? Like they're I mean Nicole even have to say it, didn't even bother to show it. Like, we know they're not going to throw her in.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so as much as Jemmy's point was a valid one, at the same time, like you're still putting your faith in the hands of people who, when they decide to give themselves a reason, have no problem turning it around on you.
Exactly. And, it led to a very interesting Inquisition, which was back after one episode of being off the Inquisition, right? But
it's true. I want to point out, because you guys never made I don't think you guys have ever made the connection that, like the Spanish Inquisition.
What's the connection? What am I missing?
Oh, as in like that, like that they're in Spain, and so like it's all like.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's like the Spanish Inquisition, right?
I got you.
The history thing, and
I got you.
Was that about witches? I can't remember. Or was that about or was it a religious thing? Either way, it was like, people were brought in and put on trial and all that stuff, right?
That's where John comes in. He's a smart one. I'm just
I'm
just here for the club scene.
I thought from the time they called it the Inquisition, I always thought that was a brilliant, this is good wordplay on the producer's part, hat tip to you guys.
I'm sure you guys are totally right, but that's where John comes in, and he'll have some definition from, some Encyclopedia Britannica or something like that. He's a smart one. He's a noted smart one. He's the actual journalist. I'm just here for the club scenes. I'm here for the jokes. I'm here for that foolishness.
Agreed. You know what? So am I. But every now and again, I like catching those notes.
Nothing wrong with that. Hey, I appreciate those notes too. I like learning. I'm here to learn too. Nothing wrong with that. But in this edition of the Inquisition, to me, the most interesting part was the fact that we actually got to see for the first time in a while, actually, a heated Inquisition. Because you had two sides. You had two people, most notably Killa and Natalie, who were on opposite sides of the spectrum. Well, the smartest move ever was the fact that you had Kara, who just noticed what was going on early and just sat back and watched the two of them go at each other.
Yep.
That to me was the most interesting part of that whole Inquisition. No? Well, that and the Burger King.
And I think Kara also benefited from it seemed like she kind of spoke first. I don't know if it was just editing or whatever, but she basically just made a plea for a plea that she's somebody you want to keep in a final.
Exactly.
She didn't really say anything against the other. She was like, I am a great competitor. I'm great all around. If final time comes and I'm on your and you need they tend to partner up in the finals at some point in time. I'm going to be a benefit to you.
No, definitely.
And that was basically her only argument. And then she just sat back and did not have any Burger King. That was on the table.
Yeah, the Burger King was a bit much, but I didn't think that there was that much eating of said Burger King either. But that's another story.
It did not seem so.
Yeah. I was gonna say something that I probably shouldn't, so I'm not gonna say it. No, it was about I'll tiptoe around it because I was just about to blurt it out, and I'll tiptoe around it, and be very calculated. But there was a recent example of food being a thing on a network, on a television show, and they actually ended up getting in trouble because when they showed it on air, actually part of the broadcast and part of the show. And when they showed it on air, it was a fast food joint, but they just showed it, as fast food normally comes. Like, here are the bags and you're pulling it out of the bags and, the burgers are wrapped or whatever, but it just looked like super sloppy and not how, people would want company would want their food to be shown or displayed in what it comes down to as an ad, right? And so it just looked really bad, and supposedly it wasn't a good look for said
advertiser.
Said advertiser.
Said food chain.
Yes, and people are going to try to make assumptions about what I'm talking about based on where I work, and I'll get ahead of that and say, no, it has nothing to do with where I work. But I'm still tiptoeing around it anyways. Because
they're going to come after you.
Hey, that's all I'm going to say. I'll let other people connect those dots.
I like going to said chain. I don't need my face put up there just to be like, yo, don't serve this guy ever again.
Right? So yeah, Inquisition goes down, heated conversation, and I actually thought that they were going to pick Killa to go in because I thought the move was, okay, you picked Cam, you put Cam in, you obviously want Cam out, so I thought the move was you're going to put Killa in because you think Killa would have a good chance of getting Cam out, but also you'd be breaking those two up. That's what I thought the move was going to be. But instead, they select Natalie as her karma just spirals in a complete opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
She goes in to this elimination challenge against Cam, which reminded me of, I know a lot of our listeners probably, if I was going to make I don't even know what the percentage would be, but I'll say the majority of our listeners are from the States. So they're not going to get this reference, but I'm sure they have the equivalent thing to what we have in Southern Ontario, which was the Boyne River trip that you would take, and you would go to like this like sleepaway camp when you were in like grade 7 or grade 8, I think it was.
Yeah,
You go to like this sleepaway camp, and it's like you have dorm rooms, like massive dorm rooms, like you're doing like ropes course and all that. But anyways, the challenge reminded me of the ropes course.
Okay.
Right, and so that's what it looked like to me. Except the ropes course, you'd be like way higher up than they actually were in this, but the sentiment was the same in terms of how you have to get from one side to the next.
The ropes would be more secure. You wouldn't have to worry about flipping sideways and all that stuff. It'd be just kind of like, you slide, you're shimmy yourself across it.
So this was a super difficult. I thought this challenge was super hard, right? And I'm always, I'm the weird watcher because I'm always thinking of how they were editing this and how it's being put together. So I'm always thinking ahead of, okay, Cam's gonna win this because they're trying to build up too much that Natalie should win. Right. And I
instantly thought that too. I mean, going into it, I wrote down small and small, light, and agile, which would be Natalie, versus the upper body strength and overall strength that Cam probably has over her. Like, which one's kind of gonna win out? Like, it seems like this was right up Natalie's alley. Like, she's light. She presumably has good balance from gymnastics and cheerleading and stuff. Like, it seemed like it could be an easy win, but with the unsteadiness, like you couldn't need that strength to keep yourself balanced that she might not have, and Cam might be able to like just use her own to overcome not having those other advantages.
Exactly. And the other thing too was, so at one point you're going across and the ropes are straight, but then they cross over at another point. So the same way that you notice that they ended up at one point being more horizontal or upside down, it looked like that was going to be a necessary part of this at some point. The thing was, it almost benefited Cam that she fell earlier, because then she realized that, okay, well, if I just turn this into an upper body thing and like pull myself across instead of thinking that I'm doing it with my legs and following, right? Because I think like that's the thing. Like you think when you're walking across, okay, well, I'm going with my feet across and that's how I'm going to get across. Instead of once you flip, my upper body's going to be stronger in terms of being able to pull myself across. And that's what happened to Cam, whereas Natalie got stuck. And Natalie, once she got stuck, she couldn't move. And that was her demise. But once she lost, Devin says, I thought this was kind of harsh. He says, Natalie panics. That's what liars do when they panic. Is he being too harsh? Like, is he really that salty over Natalie?
I don't know if it was harsh as much as it was like just a bit of a stretch. Like,
yeah.
Like, it definitely. He's not wrong. At the same time, to make that connection at that particular point in time didn't seem necessary.
Exactly. Definitely was not necessary. That's true.
It's like, you're right. A liar would panic in the lie. Like, why would a liar panic when they're hanging upside down? I don't know.
So, yes, Killa Kam wins again. And I feel like I heard someone in the background actually yell Killa Kam.
Someone did yell Killa Kam. I wrote it down one day. I'm like, Killa Kam.
I was just making sure.
Probably right.
Probably, right? Shouts to Killa Kam, both of the dipset and also of the challenge. Both Killa Kams, shout out. But she improves to 3-0 in eliminations this season. And again, Natalie, wow. Right? Like, you were on the winning team. You were in the Troika. You got to pick the teams. You were on the winning teams. You let them lie to you. You let them tell you that you were safe. And then after watching them do the same thing the past 2 weeks, in fact, you were involved in the lying to Brittany last week, right?
Yep.
Then you were winning the elimination.
To quote everyone's favorite DJ right now, you played yourself.
She really did play herself, right? She really did play herself.
It's one of the things I noted too was that like after the Inquisition and stuff, and they had like the confessional, and she's like, Kayla, like, you're my new vendetta. I'm like, you're about to be double crossed and lied to. Why are you mad at Kayla?
Exactly.
Like, you're not paying attention.
Exactly. Right? Like she's gonna go back.
How on earth is Kayla your number one when these guys just lied to your face.
Exactly. Right? Like, she's going to go back and watch the season and be like, I messed up like so many different times.
So many times.
So many points along the way. But Natalie goes home and she's crying in her confessional and on her way out. And I'm just like, man, Natalie is still so dope. Oh, my God. But anyways, so
you realize, that there might have been one more pool scene coming or something, and you're not going to get it. Maybe
I'm sure she'll be
one more club scene, could you at least get her in another confessional with the V-neck one more time?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing too, right? So Natalie leaves, Cam wins, and Cam gets the grenades, which we'll get to. But then they show what the next challenge is, which just seems super crazy. You're like running up a mountain, and then you have to like run across a bridge and through the town, and then you're rappelling down the side of a wall, running back up another mountain. Like, it's crazy challenge going on, right? The next challenge.
Definitely, I did find it odd. They only mentioned one distance, which is that it was a mile up the mountain.
Yeah.
Essentially, or a mile uphill. Mm-hmm. Didn't say how long you run into the town or how long the run is after you get to the bottom of the wall. So, part of me really wanted to know that.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it would be that long, like the run through the town, or the rest of it didn't seem like it would be that long. And I only say that because I don't feel like many of the people, when they finished, looked like they were tired, but they didn't look like they were super sweaty or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't know if that even makes sense.
No, it did, because even running a mile in general isn't that far. Mm-hmm. Adding the hills and those kind of off path. It seemed like it definitely didn't seem like they were on a. It definitely seemed like they had to go through some rough terrain. Definitely added an element to it, but generally speaking, a mile isn't that far. So, like, if you think it's like a mile up the hill, maybe. I don't know how far they went through the town.
You also get to rest on the zip line. Exactly. That's true. You're also getting to rest in between the different stations, right? So, like, rappelling down on the zip line.
It was more about the running, but at the same time, it wasn't like the first challenge in the first episode where they had to run up the Rock of Gibraltar.
Yeah, and the other thing too to remember, right? Because just to give a little breakdown in terms of like the production side of all this. The reason why they filmed the challenge the way that they did was because obviously you have it staggered because people are going to be waiting for another person to rappel down before they can go, right? People are going to be waiting for another person to do the zip line before another person can go. So that's why it's shot this way, which also makes it easier, I would say, in production-wise, right? Because you're only focused on one person at a time going through a certain station. So I think that probably helps, but it looked super hard. Like, it looked like a difficult challenge, and
it definitely is difficult if you don't got your cardio up.
For sure. And the other thing I thought about, I'm like, man, Natalie probably would have been really good at this.
That was because she definitely excelled in the last running challenge.
Exactly.
So like it definitely again, it was another challenge that was very straightforward. No strategy, just like
just go.
It was basically a straight run. Like part of it was uphill. You had that moment where you had to rappel down, but the rest of it's all just running, really.
No, definitely. It was a straight just endurance challenge, and it would have been interesting to see how she would have done in this, but we don't really get to see how well or how poorly anyone really did because we don't know the times, and it was a timed event. So that was a tease that we'll find out next week because two people will be automatically sent home. But at the same time, I can't wait to find out what happens in the next episode. But before we get there, LT, I know you're a listener to You Killed It, so I know that you know how we end most episodes. And
yes, sir.
The question to you, sir, is who killed it for you in this episode?
Ooh, I won't lie, it's hard because like I didn't even write one down before we got started because no one really super stood out as far as like the entire episode went. Mm-hmm. At least the one you had Zach and Tony again getting themselves into the Troika and doing a good job there, but at the same time it was super easy in a way because the girls didn't stand up to them. The way they picked the teams was really, it was really a no-brainer for them. Like it was theirs to lose.
Yeah.
So I don't know if and I don't know if I'm just getting like if it's just kind of old hat at this point because they've been running the game so long. So like I wasn't really looking their way. But in the end, like once took them out of it, the only person that really stood out was Killa Kam.
Okay.
Because to go into a third elimination, and not only that, but like her overall demeanor about it. Like, she never got upset. She never got like she's never high or low. She just like, I'm going in. I'm gonna do my best to come back.
Yeah.
And she's avoided the bitterness and the pettiness that you see throughout, which kind of makes for good TV, but at the same time, it kind of gets old where like everyone's just so upset when people are just trying to play a game. And she also had the moment of we skipped it with the grenade in this challenge where she gave Cara the fake like, oh Cara, I've given you 2 grenades,
just for old
now I'm
time's
gonna
sake.
take Devin's money.
Yeah,
like that was by probably the funniest moment of the episode. So you know what? We give it to Killa Kam.
Not mad at that. Killa Kam with another great performance. Killa Kam surviving another week. I want to see how she does. For me and who killed it, this is a weird choice because obviously, as you said, right? Like you don't want to just give it to Tony and Zach again. But also a few other candidates. I was going to say TJ killed it. I thought TJ had a really good episode.
Oh, TJ had a fantastic episode. I meant to point out after Natalie's elimination that he once again pointed out how much foolishness this was that, like, essentially they just let this happen.
They let it all happen. Yeah, they let the guys run it. Yeah.
I'd even shout out, like, TJ kind of got his Jeff Probst from Survivor.
I don't rate
Jeff
Probst,
because he's notorious for, like, when they have the tribal councils of just calling out nonsense that's going on.
I don't rate Jeff Probst, man. I don't rate him.
Hey, I haven't watched Survivor in a long time. I'll say that much. I haven't watched it in a long time, but but he definitely, like, when they had their councils and stuff, will blow up a spot.
That's one of his moves. I got you. I hear you. So with that said, though, my pick for who killed it, this is a low-key move, but I'm going to say Brad. And the reason I'm going to say Brad is because Brad, I mean, he kind of has himself under the radar in this moment, right? Like, he used a grenade. He was smart enough to use a Troika, which will kind of save him, at least for next episode, I think.
Yep.
But it was just well played. He forced his way into the Troika this time around. He used his grenade smartly. He asked the right questions at the right time, how to not screw himself with the grenade.
That is a very, very valid point.
If you think long term, Brad was basically on the chopping block from the very beginning. He had a very loud start to this season, arguing with Marie, his relationship with what's her name, Brittany. Like, he had a loud start to this season. And the fact that he's not only still here, but he's put himself in a pretty good position just ahead of what we think is going to be the final. I'm going to give I'm going to give Brad a little bit of credit here and say that, Brad, you killed it in this episode. That's my pick.
That very, very solid choice. He definitely dialed back the crazy. The eyes went back into his head, and he seems to have survived all this time.
Yeah.
I think in the end, you only ended up going to what, 1 elimination or 2?
He definitely went into the one last week, right?
Last week, right?
Yeah. I don't remember if he went into one before that. As you said, like, what happens is things become a blur.
Right.
Things become a blur for me because it seems like so long ago. Like, the pizza fight with Marie, like, that doesn't even seem like that was this season. That seems so long ago.
Definitely, and it feels that way. Like, I mean, it feels like Marie's been gone for like a month and a half, and it's only been probably 3 weeks, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. No, for sure. Super interesting. And you know what, LT? Not only did Brad survive, not only did Killa Kam survive, but you survived this episode as well of You Killed It. LT, how did it go? How was it?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for John for taking a week off.
Yes. And I mean, at some point, I'd assume I'll like have a life and I'll go on vacation somewhere or something. Something.
No more weddings this year?
Not that I know of. I think not that I know of. Although I think there is one, but I don't know. My life, I have problems. I have scheduling problems, definitely. But LT, thanks for stopping by and filling in and doing a great job in John's absence. And hopefully you can join us again, maybe when we wrap up the full entire season after reunions or something, or maybe to preview the next season, whatever the next season is of the challenge. But we will definitely have you on again, LT. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And I'll leave it to the listeners if they want me back. Maybe I'll get shamed out of here, and they're like, bring John back. We can't deal with LT anymore. Just he could just listen from now on. We'll leave it to Reddit and Facebook and the comment section to see if I survive.
Well, here's the thing: you can give the people if they want to follow you on Twitter, and you can give out a Twitter account if you want the people to follow you and tell you how much they enjoyed listening to your voice.
Yeah, sure. You could catch me on Twitter at LTZ or LTZ, depending on where you're listening. But just the letters LTZ29. And that's where you find me on Twitter and Instagram.
And you can find me, Sheldon Alexander, on Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. And hopefully you all enjoyed this edition of the You Killed It podcast. Until next time, see ya. Or no, what do I say at the end of this one? I think I always go...
Was I going to do it?
No, I think yeah, that's what I say at the end of this podcast. What's going on? John, what? I need the reminders. I'm losing my mind here. That's amazing. I'm just going to leave the outro like that, too. I'm not even going to change it.